Welcome to another episode of SummitCast. We have our friend Samuel back with us on this show, and we're going to be talking about Black Lives Matter. Samuel, welcome to the show. You wanted to talk about Black Lives Matter. So what would you like to say about it?
I think it's a great initiation and a great initiative. However, I think that with all great things comes maybe like some influence of darkness within it that always tries to creep in. So I think originally how it started was going good until kind of they start adopting some like communist things and Marxist ways. And I think that on average, on the surface of it, I think that everyone could agree about the mission. You know, it's saying like all lives matters, and if all lives matter, that means Black lives have to matter, right? And then because Black lives are included in that all lives. But I feel that also there are plots to kind of like get in and subconsciously and subtly maybe tweak people's perspectives about certain things very subtly, you know, and maybe not being the best, you know, way for everyone.
Yeah. One thing that occurs to me is that there's kind of Black Lives Matter really means two different things. One is kind of the slogan and the aspiration that many people have of, you know, addressing the racial injustice in America. And, you know, you see all the people marching and you know, white people, black people all together marching for this cause, and they're really sincere about it. And then you have kind of the organization Black Lives Matter, which is kind of has a somewhat of a different agenda, it seems to me. And that's where you see the communist infiltration and the Marxist infiltration coming in, I think. And you know, some things that they're promoting that aren't even really representing what black people in general want.
Definitely.
So what's the most important thing that you think that Black Lives Matter as a movement is getting right, or is what are the things that it's helping to promote?
I think it's helping to promote a different perspective in the media of how African Americans are portrayed or treated. Like if you notice now, almost everywhere you drive, especially in major cities, you see Black Lives Matter signs in people's yards and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that some companies, without a doubt, are unfortunately using it as a marketing scheme, right? We support Black Lives Matter, right? Because that's trending right now. However, because of the media attention, especially last year during elections, obviously why, you know, it's elections. So of course they're bringing everything up to everybody's mind. But Black Lives Matter having that spotlight for a certain amount of time, I feel actually promoted a little bit more of to touch people's hearts. Like, okay, so yeah, something is primarily wrong with how our system is regulated, right? Or like the police force or this or that. And I feel that we're all responsible for ourselves. You know, I can't be responsible for the next man. Whatever he does is, you know, it's on him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So I can only be responsible for myself. I think that showing the unjust things that happens to Black lives or African American lives has definitely been promoted in the last year, especially the COVID thing has been promoted with Trayvon Martin and George Floyd. Trayvon Martin was back in 2013.
Right, as well.
George Floyd was last year, Breonna Taylor. So I feel that it's opening people's hearts to start looking at people like, okay, this is my brother or sister. We may not come from the same family, same background, same culture, demographics, but this is my brother and this is my sister. So what can I do to help?
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I kind of feel like last time you were talking about the media's influence on all of this, and you see videos of white cops and Black people interacting and having these positive interactions sometimes, and it just makes me think that perhaps a lot of what we're experiencing as I'm not sure how to say it, but it is more to do with the media trying to keep us apart, trying to keep our hearts apart, and say that all police are bad, or all Black young men are destined to commit murder, or something like that. You know, it's the media is always trying to push that narrative, whereas in real life we have these interactions that are heart to heart.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, I think that's what it is, the divide and conquer tactic, or fear. Because, as the Bible says, God did not give you a spirit of fear, but yet the media seems like it's always trying to instill fear into people, right? 4 people murdered over here. This person, this happened. It's constantly feeding you negative information, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you said, no, it's definitely an agenda, right? And I think that the agenda isn't necessarily targeted only at Black lives. It's a global scale, right? Because how I see it, slavery still exists, right? The tactics may change, but the goal is still the same, right? So I think it's more on a world scale than just right here in America.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've seen is, what Noah was talking about the portrayal in the media of, Black people and police, and they take something like the George Floyd thing or other situations like that, and they play it again and again and again. And it seems to me it's kind of trying to create like, as you were saying, like a fear. It creates a fear of Black people, a bit of police. They feel like anytime they have an interaction with a white policeman, they could be killed.
Right. Isn't that that's what LeBron James said, right? He fears going in public and being murdered. But.
Yeah. And that's, that reminds me of, not many years ago, the concept that, white people were, if they saw a Black person coming down the street, they would cross over the road because they were afraid they were going to get mugged or something, Right. And so there's just a fear of all Black people in general. I kind of see what's happening is this fear of white people, or fear of policemen, is furthering the division. And the media kind of takes these incidents, which are not all that common, and they kind of say, paint a picture. This is what life is like in America, whereas I think it really isn't. You see, occasionally someone will post something on Facebook, which is a really wonderful interaction between a policeman and a Black person, or I think those are just as representative of what's really happening out there, but they just don't get the coverage in the media, and it does tend to create division.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, that is the case. Like, I'm in my work uniform, right? No street clothes, no like do-rag and nothing, like just regular work clothes, right? And walking in, and as I'm walking in, older white lady is kind of walking like parallel to me, about to go inside, and like she has her mask on, she constantly like looking at me. I'm like, why is she looking at me like that? Is it because I don't have my mask on? Yes, I was fumbling with my mask, like maybe it's my mask. And we get inside, and she's still like giving me like this very peculiar look. This happened like more than like maybe like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
And I go inside, and then remember the cart. So I turned around, went to go get a cart or a buggy, and she was right there. And I kid you not, she looked at me, and then she clutched her purse and put it in her buggy. Like seriously, like while looking at me suspiciously. I'm like, okay. I'm not gonna take that personally, but that was weird. You know,
Grandma, you must have 10 grand in that purse. Why are you holding it like that?
I came here for apple juice, not your purse. So,
Wow.
but yes, unfortunately, or for example, like me directly driving down the street, I don't care if my insurance is good, my headlights, all the lights on my cars are good. I don't have no warrants. No, if I see a cop car, it's just a second nature to hit brakes. I don't care if I'm going to speed limit.
Mm-hmm.
It's second nature to have some type of insecurity when you see a police vehicle. Like, oh, wonder if you're gonna stop me. Because I have been stopped just randomly at times of driving around certain neighborhoods that they feel that I don't belong, right? And the cops just want to question, what you doing? Why are you around here? Do you have anything in the car? Right. And unfortunately, that's because of the media, right? But the media show these things because it happens, right? It's not that they just shooting this stuff in Hollywood and and put it on the news. This things really happen, right? These people have died within these years, right? And so the reality is, it is bad, right? I can't sugarcoat it. It is very unjust. It's not just with Black lives; it's with Hispanic lives as well, right? For the majority of, from my experience, I'm not saying this is the case, but just from my personal experience, Hispanics and Black lives, and there are communities and a percentage of white people who don't have the typical image of the white American life, right? Some people call them trailer trash, or just, like, seriously, like, and I've met these people and they have the same mindset as a lower class African American or a lower class Hispanic. They have the same exact mindset. Don't trust the police, can't always looking over their shoulder and different things like that. Even if they're in illegal activities or not, it's still like an initial fear, because even the car you drive give off a certain impression, right? If you driving a bucket down a nice neighborhood, okay, you're gonna stand out, right? So people are automatically gonna judge you. But as far as the clips of police officers killing or abusing their power on any minority, I think the rage comes with the results of the trial for the policeman, right? Because
Yeah.
they're killing people, flat out murder, right? And they're getting off with suspension and a couple of days without pay, or just transferred to a different department or a different station.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that enrages people, right? That's the unjust part, because if it was just a regular person defending themselves and they shot somebody, then more than likely 9 times out of 10, especially if they're not rich and can afford a great lawyer or pay off people, they're going to jail, right? It's almost in stone. You're going to jail. And so I don't agree with like how people outpicture their hatred and their anger. I don't agree with it, but I understand it, because it is pretty tough to know that that's actually happening within our borders, right?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think is really a need is police reform. One of the reasons you have those, cases which get dismissed, which are, really egregious behavior by police, is there was I believe there was a Supreme Court decision which has kind of set a very high bar for establishing, police misconduct. I mean, it ended up being where it's almost impossible to convict a policeman of doing something wrong. And there was some legislation which was proposed last year, which was going to address that, but it didn't go anywhere, because what I could see is that if you actually address the problems, then with the police, then you wouldn't have an argument for defunding the police, which is what people wanted to do. Another problem with police reform, I think, is I've read about there's an issue with police unions, where the contracts they have make it very hard to get rid of policemen who are even seriously racist or doing bad things. It's very hard to fire them. So that's another obvious area where you can have reform of the police system to address the very real issues that are out there.
Definitely.
Well, because I think of the officer, specifically of George Floyd, the officer did have complaints on his record from fellow officers, and I think that's one of the big keys here is that if you have a fellow officer raising concerns that, hey, this guy's going too far, he's too rough with people, he's doing this, whatever. And then I mean 3 strikes even seems a little bit too much. At that level, that we should have a plan in place that if I don't perform at my job, then I get fired. That's the way life works. So if they should take those, because if you have an individual citizen who says, oh, this cop mistreated me, I have no evidence of it, but this happened, and we've seen many times where those affidavits were completely false, and the people actually go to jail for false claims against police officer. A woman who claimed that the officer attempted to rape her, and then they actually pulled the footage, and nothing of the sort happened, and she was just trying to get off her plea or whatever, and so if you can take the claims from fellow officers to a higher standard and say, okay, if you get more than 2 or 3 complaints from a fellow officer, you're done, you're gone.
This is not the career for you.
Yeah, this is not the career for you. You can go be a mall cop. You can do something else. There's plenty of jobs, but this one isn't it, you know?
Absolutely. I think when looking at police history, so I don't agree with defunding the police. I do agree with reform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because police still has an importance within any community.
Right.
And it's just how they handle it. For example, you have to go through X amount of weeks or months to become a police officer, right? You gotta go through like psychological training, how to handle stressful situations. And one thing I learned from the military, even in basic training, is very clear and precise of how to handle your weapon and when to use lethal force. Right? Yeah. We all know that police officers have tasers. Right? We know that they have paintball guns or little guns, non-lethal weapons. Right?
Yeah.
And so there are several ways and methods to use to de-escalate any situation before it comes down to lethal force.
Yeah.
So when you have a situation where a professionally trained police officer who's trained to use a firearm, who's trained to know the law, who's trained to handle stressful situations better than the average person with no training. There comes a problem when someone like that who's trained is scared for their life, right? In a situation when a person is just yelling or has a knife, right? An untrained person, right? So if I'm a trained police officer and Noah, you come at me with a knife, right? And you 10 feet away from me.
I don't need a knife.
Right? It's a lot bigger than me. Right? I'm supposed to know how to handle this situation. Right? Without the first thought, all right, let me just grab my gun and shoot.
Right.
Well,
I think that's a tricky situation because tasers are at best 50% effective. I think pepper spray is actually a great solution because I think it's over 90% effective when properly deployed. But when you got, I could see that argument if they're 50 feet away or where they can't even throw the knife at you because it's not going to do anything. But I think once they get to that, like the Tueller principle of 21 feet, once they get within that range where you're reaction time before they're on top of you doing bad things to you is just too short. So I think it's hard to get into police policy because they live in a world, like you said, they're trained. They live in a world that's completely different than us, where they have to make those calculations. Like, okay, do I have lethal cover before pulling out my taser? Normally they're supposed to have lethal cover, meaning another officer with a gun before they'll pull out a taser and shoot the guy. Because what if the taser doesn't work? 50% of the time it doesn't work. What are you going to do?
The ones that get stuck with the taser and just fight through
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you see Incredible Hulk, he's like, I'm fine.
But
Yeah.
You got it. Like, an average civilian doesn't know how to handle a stressful situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if they have a gun drawn. Most people in America have never stared down a barrel of any weapon. Right. So how's the average person supposed to react in a situation like that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're literally split seconds away between life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But the person on the other side of this gun who's holding it is trained. Right. So it's like, why do you have your gun drawn and I'm sitting in my car with my hands up? Like, why are you about to shoot me? Like, my hands are up and you got your gun drawn. So reform is definitely key on, as you said, especially if a coworker, a fellow police officer reports something on you, right? Because if you go, I think the biggest gang in the world are the military and policemen, right? Right.
Yeah.
Uniform, they stick to the code, right? The blue code, whatever they call it, code blue, whatever it is, right? They look out for each other. They don't snitch, just like street code. The only difference is they have a little bit more resources and they have a lot more backing because of the law, right? Compared to your average organized crime gang, right, in LA, Chicago.
Yeah.
So I think with that, with a reform, you have to look at what exactly are they trying to keep in order? Whose agenda are they trying to keep in order?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you would argue that there are definitely good policemen out there. Right. There are bad policemen. There's good plumbers. There's bad plumbers. Right. There, it's
Yeah.
to everything. But I think when it comes to education and how society is ran in the system, we're trained to be one thing. We're trained to just know one thing. You're a lawyer, be a lawyer. Don't worry about what happens after you sign that paper and where it goes to, right? Don't worry about that. Oh, you're a police officer. Hey, just fill in this paperwork. I'm going to tell you to look for this, and this. Don't worry about what the repercussions of what your action does. So when it comes to corruption, most people don't look for it. Why? Because it's like, it don't deal with me. My job is just to do this, this, and this, right? That don't concern me. But in reality, your job is actually helping the corruption, whether you know it or not, right? So I think Trace, just one, unfortunately, following the money, right? Following the money to figure out who actually controls the police, right? We know there's mob ties and mafia ties and different things like that, and all types of corruption, right, within governments. So it has to be a banding together to know when to step out of the uniform, to know, all right, this is only a job. I'm only a police officer X amount of times out of the day. But right now, I see that my brother, my sister, whether it's from a different race or not, is being harassed, is being abused, is being taken advantage of. So it's time for me to put this badge down and just be a decent human being, right? Yeah. And step in. But unfortunately, a lot of people we know from past, like, reincarnation, right? Especially light bearers, right? We get murdered, right? Fallen angels or whatever have you, the opposition murderers. We, become whistleblowers, and what happens? Usually we die because of it, right? And then boom, here we come back again, same. So there's a fear of stepping up, right? Seeing 100 people kick one person, you know it's wrong to kick that person, but what am I gonna do? 100 people are kicking. Like, what can I do? Right.
Yeah.
So they just, put their head down and keep it moving. So it definitely, I believe that the Black Lives Matter movement, All Lives Matter movement, even the coverage of what's happening down at the border of like the kids in cages and different things. And I think it's sparking more people to awaken and question what's really going on. Like, it's that subconscious deep down in a lot of people's subconscious, we remember in our soul a golden age, right? We remember what it's like to walk and talk with God, right? To maintain that intense focus and adoration towards our God presence, right? So I feel that certain events throughout our history wakes up a certain group of people, right? To start questioning.
Yeah, I can see that one thing that could come out of this is that individual policemen start doing what you're saying. They'll talk about the problems. If they see another policeman doing something bad, they'll maybe talk about it now, because they can see how bad it can get if they don't address it early. I mean, you look at what happened with George Floyd. If people had said something earlier, then a whole lot of bloodshed, a whole lot of people wouldn't have had to die, who died in those protests. And so hopefully, individual policemen will kind of have the courage to step up and say something if they see something that's not right.
Well, I think that was the criticism of the other officers that were there. They were training officers or something. They were like first day on the job or something.
Yeah.
And so I guess they didn't feel, I don't know, empowered to actually step in that moment.
Yeah. Which they could have done.
Which of course you can. First day on the job or last day on the job might be the same.
I've thought about that a lot since then, but yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that's kind of part of the training, I think, that's needed for the police, that regardless of what your seniority is, if you see something that's not right, you got to say something.
Right.
Yep. Unfortunately, America has a history of getting rid of whistleblowers, right?
Yeah.
If one is blessed enough and fortunate enough to get away, the U.S. usually goes after them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there's definitely agenda. If you look at Hollywood, for example, I think mostly all big Black actors or actresses, or at least actors, at one point in time in their career, they had to put on a dress, right? Will Smith and all these big time actors at one point in time had to put on the dress, had to be gay in the scene. Something had to happen homosexually, right? And some people will say, well, it's just Hollywood, but no, it's literally a pattern, right? If you go back 20 years, you can see this happen, right? The biggest stars, right? And I will watch some interviews of people who, certain actors who said they was approached by the writers, hey, we got this funny scene for you, put on this dress, and they decline, right? And usually those actors are the ones who aren't A-listers, right? Or was at one point A-listers and they just completely fell off the map, right? And I think that there's a lot more evil things being done in the world that's put right in front of our face, but a lot of people aren't aware of, right?
Yeah.
And as far as the topic of racism in America, I think it's tough to talk about because some people don't acknowledge it, right? Some people don't even accept that it's true, for real.
Yeah.
Because maybe they have never had it happen to them, right?
Yeah.
once again, I think the best thing that we can do as a people is to just move on, for like forgive and forget. Right? It's tougher, it's easier said than done, but if we can approach everyone with a sense of love and humility, know that this man, this woman is trying to go home to their family, right? Whether I like their culture or not, whether I agree with choices or music or this or that, this person is on the same earth as me. I don't care if this person was born in a third world country, over here, down the street, we're all born on earth, right? This is our home, right? So what's the point in hating each other, right? They say you can't love your brother but hate your neighbor, right? Because we're all one. It doesn't work like that, you know. So yep. Also, I think that with the technology now and this technical age that we're in, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Vine, all these different things, it's allowing uh, millions of people to see a different side of life that Fox News, ABC, and D, all the media companies or whatever won't show you, right?
Yeah.
So now you can have someone like me just film my life. Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up, YouTube? Right? Check out my life, and
like and subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. Like and subscribe down here, right? And you get to see another part that you don't usually get to see on TV. Why? Because nobody can filter what I say, right? I'm not getting paid for what I say, so I can show you and say whatever I want to, right? But if I sign a contract and I get in front of a camera, they can control what I say, how I say it, edit it. So I can probably say 100 words, but you'll only see 50 of those words.
Yeah.
Right. So with this new age of social media, is really opening people up to different realities and different perspectives. Like, oh, this person isn't so much different than me. Right. So, you know, it's a gift and a curse, I guess, right? Like Peter said, with technology, they show us the negative, but there's also the positive. And it's just about when a person is ready to wake up, right? Because you could constantly see negative, and you never take the time to look at something different, right? It may be 20 years down the line, and then you see a funny TikTok video to make you click this person page of a different race and go through all their videos laughing for hours, right? And then that little small glimpse kind of opens you up to, like, we're not that different.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And for that to happen, you got to really, in some ways, break out of the algorithms too, because, the way YouTube works is it shows you videos like the ones you watched. So
Right.
you can end up actually, not seeing videos of different things. I mean, sometimes I'll just log out of, YouTube and start an in private session just so that I'll see some different videos than the ones they keep showing me all the time,
And then you see random videos like
random videos,
women's archery, Olympic archery, and I'm just like, why on earth are you suggesting that to me? And of course I click it and watch it, and it's extremely fascinating. And then all the comments are like, this is amazing, I just watched this for half an hour, and I've never watched archery in my life. YouTube, why are you doing this to me?
And then you'll see a whole bunch of other archery videos come up in your feed
exactly.
because I mean, they should change their algorithms so you every now and then get a random video like that. Just to
I think that's what that was.
They do. It would be good. I think it's helping people get out of the circles they move in.
So do you think we have? I saw the interview with Morgan Freeman like a year ago with Don Lemon, and Don Lemon asks him, do you believe we have systemic oppression in the U.S.? And his answer was unequivocally no, that we don't, that he doesn't experience it, that we don't have it anymore. How do you feel about that answer? I mean, that he doesn't see it happening.
what was the question that
Systemic oppression. He said, does systemic oppression exist in the U.S.? So a systemic.
He said, "Look at me," didn't he? Like,
right? Yeah, he said something like, "Look at me. Are you kidding me?" He's like, "I'm like one of the richest people in Hollywood." But no, he has a very successful career, and I think what I took away from it was that he grew up in Mississippi, I believe, and so he had and he's old enough to have seen true systemic level oppression where blacks sit in this area, whites sit in that area, and we're done. And so I think maybe that's kind of where he was coming from, his past of that. So how do you feel when you hear that?
I would have to say that there are certain traps for everyone. I think everyone in the lower class, not just African Americans, everyone in the lower class society has a lot of traps placed before them to kind of like keep them where they're at, right?
Yeah.
But I also would have to agree, because we live in America, you could avoid those traps if you really wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. Now, once again, the resources available to a lower class area compared to a middle class or upper class neighborhood, right, is totally different.
Right. Of course, being in an acting school in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, versus New York City, it's gonna be your opportunities are gonna be a little bit different.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And there comes, we talk about generational curses, right? Passing things on through generations, and a lack of knowledge in how America is ran is a generational curse. Because if you don't know how money works, how taxes work, right, how to make money work for you, then you can't teach that to your kids. Right? And therefore, if they never take it upon themselves, they'll pass that on to their kids, right? And so if someone said that it's crazy that the government won't give me a business loan, a $10,000 business loan, right, but they'll give me $100,000 loan for college.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to me, right there is a trap. Right. That's a flat out red flag. You ain't gonna give me $10,000 for me to create a LLC that can probably help the economy, even if it's just locally. But you're willing to have me go into tens of thousands of $100,000 worth of debt, right? Something doesn't add up, right?
Yeah. And I think my sister was involved in a help hotline that they had, where it was like helping people start their small business, and they had courses on money and things like that. And I was like, when she told me about it, was back in Minnesota, and when she told me about it, I was like, does this exist everywhere? This has to exist. We have to make this happen everywhere so that people can understand, how to make, like you said, make money work for them, and how to find opportunities, find things that people want. And, you can give them a better value than they're getting from what they have now, and make your life better. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. I think, what we see, once again, going back to TV, what we see on TV influence us, right? Since a child, most successful African Americans I've seen is basketball players, football players, rappers, right? And then you got your chosen few of actors, right? Yeah. But mostly it's sports and music. Now, the doctors, the teachers, the surgeons, the rocket scientists, the tradesmen, none of these people are really promoted. Right. These people may be promoted on a slight scale. Let's say they do something amazing and they get their 5 minutes of fame on the news, right? But typically we know who gets pushed the most, right? Why do I need to know Kim Kardashian is about to divorce Kanye? Why do I need to? Right? What type of news is that to me, right? But So our influence of music, for example, they show the music that they put out now is kill them, shoot them, steal from them. I'm gonna have her, and her get money, get money, get money, right? And so growing up on the east side of Chicago, born in the South, raised in the East, that's all we see, right? If the dad's not there, then our father figures is the men around us and whoever we see. And music and rappers are a big part of it. One, because we know how music, how like our chakras react, our aura reacts to music, right? And the descending spiral of like how it feels good, whatever. And so there's connections, right? We start to feel emotionally connected to people, right? Never met this celebrity before in my life, but I really like his music. When I was in a tough situation, I listened to this person, blah, 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 right? So you start to act like this person, right? Or what you perceive from the camera. And unfortunately, the ones that gets the most promotions are the knuckleheads, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, you are what you put your attention on, right? So that's why you see a large amount of like our culture portrays that, right? Because to us, that's our culture. Like, because African Americans, our culture is really starting now. We're pioneers of our culture because most of us, myself included, we don't know our ancestors. We don't know what part of Africa we came from. We don't know like their culture and what they do and things passed down. So, you know, when we came over here, we were slaves. And then after that, like the 60s and everything, the oppression, segregation, everything. So right now we're all witnessing African Americans build culture, right? And I think filtering out, or for example, I forgot what actor, maybe Leonardo or somebody said, if you don't want me to be rich, stop buying my movies, right? Stop paying for a ticket for my movies to make me rich, right? Because we will all agree that there's a major problem with somebody who could throw a ball and get paid millions of dollars compared to a teacher or police officer, right, who's risking their lives or spending more times with our children than we do out of the day. Like there's a huge disconnect. And so, in order to answer your question, are there, systematical like traps for us? Yes. Right. And I think
that sounds like a problem of role models almost. I guess how do we change that?
Well, one of them, I mean, a solution that nobody's talking about to the problems is change the music, to have a more positive message. I don't know how
like
you do
Will
it.
Smith got some clean rap.
One thing that occurs to me about the systemic racism is, in one sense, it really doesn't matter whether it's true or not in one sense, but what's really negative about it is if that's the message that you give to every black person growing up, that there's systemic racism and you can never overcome it and you can never succeed because of this systemic racism. It's a very negative message. It's a very disempowering message, and I think the message that people need to have is, well, okay, there may be systemic racism, but here's how you can succeed in spite of it. And many people have, and it's possible for you to do that too. It's got to be individual empowerment. And there's a place for talking about problems with the system, I think. And we've talked about problems with police, for example, and there's a lot of other places. Education, you can certainly look at problems there, but to me, you got to give the individual people a message that
the message of hope,
and that they can, they're empowered to change their life and make it better.
Definitely. I think it's a model in the hood. Just make it out the hood, right? Get rich. The first thing is just make it out the hood, right? But I feel that it should be make the hood better, right? Make the ghetto better. Like you get some type of money, put the money back into your community, like Peter, what you were saying,
Right.
that individual education, because it's about connections. Because unfortunately, once again, like the divide and conquer tactic of light skin versus dark skin, this game versus that game, like people are literally killing people over what block they live on. They don't even own the block, right?
They
They're
don't even own the
renting
house they live in.
like
Right.
they don't even own it. They're renting it. This is the mindset, right?
Yeah.
And so when you see a Kanye West, when you see this person, a Will Smith, it may feel good, like, oh yeah, Barack Obama, like, oh yeah, you know, we could do it. Yeah, Black Power, right? But it's totally different when somebody from your neighborhood did it, right? Someone from your area is achieving something, right? Because it's like, okay, I know this person, right? Or even if it's not, I know this person came from the same environment as I did.
Yeah.
And, but once again, like for Christ, right? Jesus Christ, for example, who did he go to, right? He didn't go to the people that was well. He didn't go to the rich people and, you know, the ones that already considered themselves holy, right? He went to the people who thought themselves not holy, right? His answer was, does a doctor go to someone who's healed? No, he goes to the sick, right? And it's a level of comfort. I feel that everybody's mission is different, right? We're all unique, all individualization of God. And it takes a special somebody to go into neighborhoods like that, communities like that, and say, hey, there's another way. You can do it like this. And it's tons of different organizations, tons of individuals that you would never hear about on the news, right? Who have taken that step, right? Who do pass out pamphlets, who like talks about abortion for women in lower class neighborhoods, and like are there to help, given financial literacy classes, right? It's just the point of one, resources, right? Because if you don't know how to do it, if you go into YouTube University, right? If you only getting your education from YouTube, you may still have a lot of questions unanswered. So you kind of just, you know, rolling with the punches throughout this thing. But there have been great efforts, right? Especially in the last few years of social media blowing up, where that one-on-one connection of how to do it is available, right? And from my personal friends, like things that I've experienced in my life, and I try to relate it to them, like, hey, you know, get out of Chicago, or, you know, if you're gonna stay there, try to look at things like this, try to read this book, like try to shift their perspective just a little bit. And it's amazing to me, but some of them are like, I never knew any of this, right? I thought that life was just how it is. Like, this is what it is. Like, I go to work, come home, you know, eat, sleep, die, basically. Right? And I didn't know it was a way out. Like, I see the people that get lucky, right? And they make it out, but they didn't know that. They didn't know about, you know, Robert Kiyosaki's Napoleon Hill and different people like who legit write books, audio books saying, hey, this is how you do it. You want to do it, you can achieve it. So you have people here that fully accept the reality of this is it. This is a struggle. This is my struggle. And this is how my whole life is going to be. Right. So there are people out like people out there like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to give them some hope and show them something else.
Yep. Got to appeal to the eye. For example, there's this guy, Derek Grace Jr., husky black dude, dreadlocks, typical image of a thug, right? Tattoos all over his face, big dreadlocks, like he just looked like somebody you don't want to run into, right? However, he is one of the most influential persons I have ever come across, right? He has a curriculum that talks about unlearn to relearn certain things. Like he promotes his videos of what appeals to our culture, right? So in his commercials or ads, he have his guns, he has his children with guns. You can see his gold chains and different things, but he's teaching about financial literacy. Like I think he just made a post the other day that his business made $11 million during the COVID, right? He write books. He write books and he gives seminars, right? And so Mother, Lanello, right? Elizabeth Clare Prophet and Lanello Mark Prophet, they will always say, meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's meeting us where we at, right? And so it's the same thing for any community, whether it's lower class, Caucasians, African Americans, Hispanics, wherever, right? They have to have the same opportunities, resources as higher class. Now, it doesn't have to be presented in the same package as long as they get equivalent to them, right?
Yeah.
Somebody may not come to my school, right? But somebody may be holding a seminar at the YMCA down the street, right? So they say a rose known by any other name still has the same smell. So it's definitely out there. It's just our expectations kind of like cloud our visions, right? Because we think it's going to come from this way, but it's really is hitting us over here. But it's like, oh no, it's not. It don't look like that. No, it's coming
Right.
from
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess something we can do individually is if we see people who are doing stuff like that, we can share it with others and help them get the message out and share it with our friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to empower people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we might wrap up this show there and look forward to talking to you again. I got a few things I'd like to talk about and get your take on. So thank you, Samuel. Great to see you again. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you.
Andrew behind the camera. Thank you too. Yep. Are we done?
We're done.
Yeah.